This is coffee number 5. I'm your host, Lara Schmoisman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to coffee number 5. And today I was thinking a little bit about ethnicity and who I am. Last night I was talking to my cousin who was my best friend growing up, and she's living in Israel right now. And for many years, we have conversation in a different part of the world at a different part of the day. While I'm having dinner or preparing dinner, she's starting very early day. And those are the only moments that we can connect. And even though we are so far apart in the world in a different cultures, we also have so much in common. Besides the genetics, which those are a given, we have culture. We have traditions. We have our Jewish traditions, but also we have our Latin traditions. And that makes us who we are and what we eat. Even, what we eat is huge for Latin and so important. So today I was thinking about all this cultural, and I want to invite someone who has a similar experience with me, because I love to discuss and talk about these ethnicities and how affect us in our business. She's a well-known journalist, and I want to invite her to introduce herself. So welcome, Yvette Bodden. I hope I said it right.
You did.
Bodden.
You did. Thank you so much, Lara, for having me. I'm really excited, and I think this is such an important topic, and I'm glad that I can share it with someone who shares my experience. I am born and raised in New York. I have a daughter who was also born and raised in New York, and I shared a lot of the traditions that my mother and my father passed on to me. But there's still that element of, she is American, but she embraces the fact that she is a Latina from, a Dominican household, which is something that I had trouble with growing up, because I was trying to, balance the fact that I was born in the United States. But, when I went home, my parents were Dominican, and, we listened to Latino music, we ate Dominican food. So I was more of trying to balance and figure out what my true identity was. And as it turns out, you can be both. You can be have that balance. So I was able to pass that on to my daughter, which is it's been a gift for me.
For me, it's such a unique experience, because in my case, my husband is from the Middle East and I'm from Argentina. We met here in LA, and my kids are all over the place. They are American, but they have all this mix of cultures. And I think it makes it amazing that they can embrace everything. But I found that society at the same time, I always trying to label them, and they don't fit in a box because they're such a mix of cultures. And even if I wouldn't, living in a city like LA or New York, and if you just embrace the city and you meet all these people, it's incredible what you can learn, and you become something else.
Well, I'm sure you've heard New York is a melting pot. And, I've been able to surround myself with so many different cultures and appreciate it. But I agree with you. There is, it's almost like a need for society to put labels on us. If we're Latino, we're Afro-Latina, we're, Latino-American. There's so many labels. And at the end of the day, we are all Latinos. We should embrace that and share the differences in a way that promotes positivity, not, takes away from our Latinidad. As I've grown, to be the woman I'm meant to be, I have just progressively embraced, the fact that I am Latina and I am American, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I love the fact that I can be both. And I'm proud of it.
I want to talk to you about business now, because you're a businesswoman, I'm a businesswoman, and I had to learn to translate myself. Mostly do business in English, because I work here in the United States for such a long time that I'm used to work in English. But then I found myself, like I do this podcast in English, I wanted to do something for the Latin community that it wasn't out there. So I started a podcast in Spanish called Marketing Simplificado. And I'll do everything that I do now, emails, everything bilingual. But I also realized that I have to speak to my audience differently. It's not the same way that we speak English, that we speak Spanish. We communicate differently. And for you, it's very similar because you work in English, but you feature a lot of Latin community and stories. So
Yes.
how do you make these two cultures and this voice merge?
You know, that's really funny that you mentioned that. So the Awakened Woman has articles in both English and Spanish. The English articles just picked up more traction. So over time, I started doing more of the English. When I write in Spanish, and I know this is, maybe you can relate, I literally think in Spanish.
Totally. You cannot say the same things.
No, you can't. And it's funny because some people think, well, you take the English and you translate it. No. Even if you were to Google translate a document, it's not the same. You don't capture the language in the same way. So I physically sit there and think in Spanish and write in Spanish. It's literally a change in my mindset.
Yeah, it's a switch.
Yes.
I always say that you understand a culture, to be honest with you, when I didn't speak English, because everyone knows that I'm self-taught. And when I moved to this country, didn't speak a word of English. I didn't understand what the Americans were laughing about. And I honestly believe that you cannot understand a culture or a language until you understand how they laugh.
Interesting. How they laugh.
Yes, or what they laugh about, because I don't find the same things funny in English or Spanish. My mind does a switch.
That is true. You're right. I never thought about it, but you're right. That's really interesting. How did you come to that conclusion? It's curious. It's really cool. I'd never thought about it.
I don't know how it came up. My team is all over the world, and I have a lot of Latin people, and I realized that many times I'm joking around in Spanish with them, and it's not something that I would find funny doing in English.
No, that's wow. That
or vice versa. Like I'm talking to my team in English, and we laugh and we make jokes or puns that they would never work in Spanish.
You know what? That is a good point. There have been moments when I'll say something funny in English, and I will be asked, "Oh, can you translate it in Spanish? It sounds funny, or it sounds interesting." It does not hit the note. It does not hit the same. Very different.
It's not. Even with expressions, like I remember my kid was very little, and he had poor thing. He had a mix of 3 languages back then. And my mom said an expression in Spanish saying, voy volando. I'll go. It means I'll be there really fast, but literally you will translate it like I'll go flying. And so my son understood literally what she was saying because he will speak the Spanish. So he looked at the sky. I look at my grandma and his grandma, like, is she a superhero or what? So
you're right. That is really interesting. I guess maybe I took it for granted, or I didn't really, stop and think about it. But you're right. There are many things that cannot be translated and hit the note that is meant to hit.
And I think, and this is where I want to bring this conversation today, that we live in a world right now that is so multi-ethnic. And even though that you speak in English, or you write in English, or you write in Spanish, and in Spanish, we have so many different slangs and so many different Spanishes that you have to speak in a neutral Spanish to make sure that you understand. Actually, one person from my team from Colombia, she has a list of words that she shouldn't say in another Spanishes.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And then she has another list of like a dictionary from other Spanish, which
You're
is
right.
crazy.
Because I remember as a young girl, I'm not going to say it on, on air, but there was a word that I would use. And my mother is Dominican, but she also has Puerto Rican influence. And I remember even with Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, there are certain words that you cannot use. They're just not, they mean something different for each culture. So it's a lot of fun when you find those things, those little nuggets among the different Latin cultures. But unless you are a Latina or a Latino, you wouldn't understand.
Totally. And I found myself, even when I write, that in English, we always say that we want to be politically correct. And that's a whole different conversation that I'm just so sick and tired of being politically correct all the time. But my thing is that I find myself trying to be multicultural correct. That everyone that I write, that my niche, and when you write, it happens to you too, for sure. You know who your niche is. But my niche doesn't discriminate age or gender or race, but I want everyone to be understood. And there's some experiences that we all have the same. We just process them differently because we laugh about different things.
Absolutely. And, I think in 2021, that has even more of an impact. There's certain things, even in the English language, that you shouldn't say, or you have to be very careful about how you phrase things and what words you use. There is definitely a lot of political correctness. So even within the English language, I think it's become an issue. Wouldn't you agree?
Totally. My question is, you as a journalist and working with all these profiles and multi-ethnic profiles, and how in the English word, which is, it's amazing, and I love to write, but sometimes it's so hard to transfer that message and those little idiosyncrasies that include part of the cultural background. How can you translate that? Because I see that you feature mostly Latin community, but in English.
Yes.
So you find yourself trying to explain or translate?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. When I interview these amazing people, amazing women, I try not to look at it from a cultural perspective. I try not to label the person in front of me. I honestly look at the person as a human being and try to translate their message in a way that everyone can relate, no matter where they come from. I think it's more about sort of removing that label and forgetting about, whether they're from one part of the world or another, and just looking at them as a human being. I try to take off those labels, because I think that is one of the issues we have in society. We focus so much on, labels, who the person is, what their name is, what their background is, what they look like, what they, what their status is financially and educational. There's so many labels that we place. And when I write these articles, I want to remove all these labels and just sort of humanize the person in front of me, if that makes any sense.
Well, that's what I love about your writing, because I can totally see that you really care about the human being. And that's why I'm trying to get tips from your process of writing, because you do such a good job writing about the person behind the story. And I see that that's really important to you. But at the same time, how did you process all this background and cultural background and include it into the story? What is your process? What is important for you to tell? How much impact their background makes in a person?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for me is highlighting the positive and extracting, and I keep using that word because it's so important to me. If I can extract the human side of a story, it's easier for readers to empathize, to connect with my story. So I really try not to focus too much on where the person comes from, because in an ideal world, I mean, I know it's not realistic, but we are all connected. And these stories that I write are to sort of support that idea that we're connected. We're all human at the end of the day. And I truly want to extract, the story in a way that other people can empathize and connect.
Yvette, I cannot appreciate enough or thank you enough for being here and for being so candid and give us all these answers. But at the end of the day, I always think that we learn a lot in our journeys, and you definitely have your very unique journey, but we also learn from our mistakes. And something new I started a little while ago in the show is I ask my guests if they can tell us one mistake that they made and what they learned from that.
Oof, I've made so many. What mistake have I made?
And that others can learn from them.
Well, this is really personal, but I think a lot of, particularly women, I'm sure there's men out there that can connect, but I think one of the biggest mistakes I've made with myself is not giving myself the worth that I deserve. I think a lot of decisions that I've made, a lot of challenges that I've had are because I haven't valued myself enough. That's been a huge mistake. But I've learned that it's never too late. It's never too late to learn your value and embrace who you are and give yourself that worth. It's really been a gift to go from not having any self-worth to falling in love with myself and understanding that I have many gifts to offer. So that would definitely be my biggest mistake, but I've learned a lot from it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing and for having coffee with me in coffee number 5.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
everyone who is listening to the show today, we're going to leave all Yvette's notes on how to find her and follow her. And people, embrace who you are, believe in yourself, find a way to love yourself, because the rest will come.
I totally agree. Thank you so much for having me.
See you next week.
It was so good to have you here today. See you next time. Catch you on the flip side. Ciao, ciao.